everybody. Welcome back to Reclaim You. Emily's here today, and we're talking about something that's been coming up a lot in sessions lately. And that is what to do when you're feeling like you're falling behind. Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Yes, we have all been there. We sure have.
But let's talk about, I don't know, I feel like it happens to all of us. We all feel like we're falling behind at some point or another. And it kind of feels like maybe I'm wrong because I'm not in my 40s yet, but the 20s and 30s are just like pressure cookers for expectations and achievements. And so much happens in those years of life. It feels
hmm
like a pretty common, I don't know, experience in the world.
For sure. For sure. I would agree. When I think about falling behind and the clients that I'm talking to about that and kind of my own experiences too, definitely 20s and 30s are what is standing out to me as well.
Hmm. Yeah, as I look at 40, I'm hoping, you know, we'll give less fucks generally. That's the
Yes.
goal. That's the
Yeah.
hope. So at least for me, at least for me.
Yes. Even
Um,
30s. I feel like
mhm,
30s are definitely better than 20s. So for all our 20 something listeners right now, it gets better. It
yeah.
does.
Let's talk about the 20s because I think you're right. The 20s are hard. You're in school for a lot of people are in school or figuring out what they're going to be doing as they're like emerging adults, young adults, emerging adults. And it's like you're set up to feel like you have to have it figured out, like what you want to do for work, what the plan is, if you're going to go to school, if you're going to take time off, where you're going to live.
Yeah, the 20s are tough because you're right. We're given all of these expectations, like a lot of times since we're kids, of like, you go to school, you graduate high school. For a lot of us, there was like pressure or like essentially being voluntold, like you go to college. You go to college for 4 years, maybe you go on and get, more education after college, and then you buy a house, you get married, you have kids. Like you're kind of given these expectations as a child, and it's like presented in a way that sounds very easy in my
Hmm.
opinion.
Yeah.
And then we don't also learn like how to be an adult. Like thinking back, like you don't learn how to buy a house, you don't learn how to pay your taxes, you don't learn how to manage money always. Like we don't learn these like very crucial things. So I think that the 20s is kind of this convergence of, okay, now I'm supposed to do all these major life things that are actually really hard. I don't really know how to be an adult because I wasn't taught how to be an adult. And then I think for a lot of 20 somethings, it's like, I don't really know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I feel a lot of shame about that because, again, I was told since I was like 5, like, you got to figure out what you want to do by the time you're 16 or 18 or
Yeah.
like literally still a child.
Yeah.
And then when you're in the moment, it's like, well, I don't want to do this. I don't know what I want to do. And again, I think a lot of shame comes up around that. So
Hmm.
I think those are the big areas that I see that really cause a lot of those feelings of like, I'm behind and this is uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that because if you think about brain development, brains aren't fully developed until after traditionally people who are taking the traditional or expected or typical, right, quote unquote,
Mhm.
typical path of going to college right after high school. Your brain still isn't even developed until after you're done with college.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
actually pretty wild that the expectation is that people are going to have it all figured out and know what field is going to light them up and they're going to be able to go into the work world and get things done and get good jobs or whatever. And even though the idea of a good job, that's an expectation too. Like, what is a good job, a quote unquote good paying job? There's so much
Mhm.
pressure to find that thing and find
Mhm.
the right fit when really, I mean, I know for me in my experience, there are so many stepping stones to get to where I am now. And who knows, like, where I'm going from here, you know?
Totally. Totally. That's actually a big one that stands out to me, like a moment that I felt really behind. I, in college, changed my major so many times. I didn't really know what I wanted to major in. Like, I was interested in psychology. I ended up going in as a fashion merchandising
You
major.
did. I didn't
I
know this
did.
about you. This is amazing. I mean, it makes sense. It fits. It
I actually
fits.
went as a fashion merchandising major. Did that for like a year, and then I was like, this doesn't really feel like the fit. Um, did journalism, like communication, I think communication for like a hot second, like a semester, and kind of panicked and was like, I'll go to law school, as one does. So I actually graduated with political science undergrad,
Uh-huh.
took my LSATs, got a job in a law firm, was like in the process of applying. But I'm so glad, looking back, I'm so glad that I got that job in the law firm, because I was like, I hate this. Like, this is so boring. These attorneys are so miserable. This idea that like I'm gonna like go to court and like fight for like all these, wrong people and climate change and like all these cool things. Like, I was like, they just read like insurance documents all day. Like, this is really boring. I don't want to do this. So I was like, I'm not going. And really lost at that moment. Like, I was still living at home. I now like didn't know what I wanted to do. My parents were like, listen, like, you can totally stay here. Like, we're not kicking you out, but like, you gotta get a full-time job. Like, I just like didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up moving to Philly because like all my friends were down here. I gave myself a couple years. I worked in like nonprofit agencies and like did some more legal, like paralegal work, things like that. And really kind of took that time to be like, okay, this didn't work out. Like, you realize that this wasn't what you wanted as a career. So like, let's try to look at what are your interests? Like, what are things that like jazz you up? What are things that you're passionate about? And what do you want out of a career? Because I realized like I don't want a traditional 9 to 5. I don't want to be like chained to a desk, like doing paperwork all day. And that was really helpful for me to be like, I love psychology. Like, I'm so interested in psychology. I've had my own struggles with mental health and like have been really helped by, therapists in the field. And that doesn't seem like the traditional 9 to 5 that I don't want. So in kind of doing that, I was like, I feel like I would love that. And I feel like I would be good at that. So I looked at some programs, I went back to school, and here we are.
Here we are.
And I felt, in those couple of years, I felt really behind. And it was, mid 20s, I'm in school, I'm doing my internship, I'm not able to kind of work the way that my friends were. And that felt uncomfortable. But looking back, I'm so glad that I was behind, because I ended up somewhere so awesome that like I don't think I would have gotten here if I didn't go through the steps that I did.
Yeah. During that time, how did you navigate that when your friends were, doing their 9 to 5s, probably making money, having maybe
They
more
were. Yeah.
resources to do things that you were able to do?
Mhm.
It feels like a recipe for like lots of loneliness and of course comparisons. Yeah. So
Mhm.
how did you weather that storm? How did you navigate that and kind of find your way out of it?
Yeah, the biggest thing that's sticking out to me is like building a really solid support system, and I was very lucky in that. Um, I had really amazing friends. I had, a really amazing partner, my now husband. I had my family, and just really building that. And even beyond that, like, my program was awesome. My professors were awesome. Like, the people that I met in my program were amazing. So really building that support system of people that, that weren't in school, like they didn't have like the actual knowledge of like what it felt like, but they were they were there to listen, they were there to help me out if I needed it. And then like in school, I think for anyone that's thinking of going back to school for something, no matter what, like building that community of people that are also there that you can talk to and be like, this is hard, or like I'm stressed, or like this feels really uncomfortable. Like, that was really, really helpful for me. Validating that like other people are also feeling this and I'm not so alone in this feeling.
And it feels important to also keep in mind and name the cultural pressures. And
Mhm.
like we talked about at the beginning, the checklist that society really has for people, generally speaking, that we're going to have things worked out, figured out. When the reality is that that's a pretty rare experience to have everything figured out, you
Mhm.
know?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I shared that story with clients a lot because I feel like that is what I'm hearing in sessions with my clients who are in college or even, like, late high school, like, about to graduate high school and clients in their early 20s. They're being like, "I don't know what I wanna do, and, like, something's wrong with me."
Mm,
And it's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Nothing's wrong with you, like, this is a very, very normal experience, and it is okay not to know. It's also okay to try things and realize that you don't like them and try something else. Because in reality, you are still very, very young.
mhm.
You have a lot of time ahead of you. You don't need to rush anything. You don't need to force anything that doesn't feel like the right fit.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And even, moving into the 30s, and we don't have experience in the 40s, like you said. So the 30s, like moving into the 30s, it feels really similar that, you may change your mind. You may realize that what you
Mhm,
thought you wanted or thought would light you up, you've been doing it for a little while, or maybe you even just dabbled in it. And it's like, oh, wait, that actually wasn't mine.
mhm,
That's like society's, or that's my parents, or that's whoever I'm trying
mhm,
to match or be like someone else in my life or people that I've seen. And so that can feel really uncomfortable when you've spent some time doing what you're doing and feeling like, oh, I feel like I'm spinning my wheels and I'm not where I wanted to be. And what do I have to do? And do I even like this? Or do I love this? Or what do I like? And who am I in the world? Can feel
mhm.
like a whole other transition and sort of like mini crisis. That feels like a big crisis in lots of ways.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I think that is a really important point. Like you are never too old to, be able to question, like, is this still the right fit? Like, are my interests shifting? Like, I think that's just part of being a human.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think in the 30s, maybe even like late 20s, I know for me, I don't know. This one part stands out to me. And I don't know when I thought it, how I thought it, but who knows? I was like, okay, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have kids by the time I'm 28. For some reason, that was like my number. 28 was a
Oh,
number.
okay.
I did get married young. I was like a child bride, right? I was 24 when I got married.
Child.
Yeah, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll have kids by the time I'm 28." Like, and obviously that did not happen. I did in lots of ways feel left behind in starting a family, but at the same time was starting a private practice and navigating building a business, right? And so I had like this other little baby that I was kind of like growing and tending to and things like that. And a lot of times, like starting a family doesn't go the way that we expect it to go and plan for it to go. And it can take a lot longer. And some people don't even get to that, milestone or expectation they have for themselves or desire they have for themselves. And so I think that's another transition, the like marriage thing, the starting a family thing, even like finding a partner in the world. There can be so much pressure in like getting that done and having that, secure and locked down by the time you enter your 30s.
Mm,
That's a hard one that I find folks that I work with are kind of grappling with a lot. And when there's that much pressure, we have to make decisions that aren't in alignment with, what we actually value, and who might actually be a really, wonderful person to spend life or time with. So I don't know what thoughts do you have around that? That's a big one.
absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's a big one that stands out, like you were saying, like late 20s into 30s. I see that it kind of transitions from career to maybe now I got my career settled enough. Now I have to find a partner, get married, have kids. And I think that there's a whole nother, like you were saying, there's a lot of complications that come around starting a family if one does want to start a family. I think especially women because we also have that good old biological
Biological clock.
biological clock.
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure there, and
Mhm.
it's hard to navigate. I'm thinking kind of my own journey in my 30s and thinking about starting a family. I feel very behind in that because I didn't know if I wanted kids or not until a year or 2 ago,
Mhm.
and that felt really late, and that was something that, I put a lot of pressure on myself before that, and I felt like a lot of pressure was put on me. It was
Mhm.
like, "Okay, like, you're getting up there, like, you're married now, like, what do you mean you
Mm.
don't know?" It was it was a lot. It was a lot
Yeah.
to navigate, and it can feel very lonely when there's people around you that have decided in either way, like people that are like definitively like either I want kids or like I have kids already, or people that are like, no, this just is not the choice that's right for my life. And like when we're in the middle of like, well, I still don't know and I'm in my
Mhm.
30s, like that feels uncomfortable.
Mhm. Yeah, and what feels most important is staying like companion to yourself through that, right? Like not abandoning yourself through that process because you feel like there's, the shame that comes along with that because you feel like there's something wrong with you from a societal perspective. The expectation is, well, of course you want kids. Like you've been married for this many years. Like, come on, get on it. What are you doing? Right.
Yeah.
How would you not want kids? That expectation that it's just inherent in everyone. And it's
Mhm.
like, absolutely not.
No,
And there's nothing wrong with that,
absolutely.
yeah, it's like parsing out like what's theirs and what's yours. And it's
Mhm.
okay to stay with what's yours and what you really desire and want for
Mhm.
your life because this is our only life, right?
Absolutely. And, obviously deciding if you want to start a family or not is I think a big area where people can feel very behind in like late 20s, 30s. I think even later.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think going back to also partnership, marriage, things like that, that is also so hard for so many people. And I feel like it's always been hard, but even more so since COVID, I want to say. I
Mhm.
feel like I've noticed a huge
Yeah.
shift. Online dating is very hard.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I feel very fortunate that I don't online date from the stories
Yeah.
that I've heard. I have heard so many just be like, "I don't know how I'm supposed to do this because this is what everyone does, and I am not finding quality people here, so, like, what am I supposed to do?"
Mhm.
And that is so stressful for so many people.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
will say, I have 2 friends that have gotten married, they met
There's
their spouses
hope.
on Tinder, so
There's
there
hope. Oh
there
my
is
gosh. Yeah,
hope.
I know. There is
There is
hope.
hope.
We hear success stories too. But
Yes.
gosh, the way of the world right now, it does not make it easy to date.
No, no, and I think part of that is, like, the shift to online, like, that the shift to online has made so many things convenient, for sure, but with dating, with something so personal, I think that that's a really tough one, and it makes sense to me why that feels like such a struggle for something that I think I ideally would be happening, like, in person, so we can, like, read vibes, so we can kind of like get those initial responses not through 2 screens.
Yeah, and even the fact that the swiping, right? It's
Mhm,
like any other social media platform. There's always something new to look at, something new to consume and to be influenced by, right? These apps
mhm,
that you're swiping, 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 it's like, oh, well, who's going to be next? Who's going to be next? Could there be more? Could there be right, better, whatever? And so it's just a mess
mhm.
and it's awful. So whoever's online dating, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
hope that you are a success story.
Yes, yes, same, same, and there are the success stories, but I totally get why that's hard, and that pressure again of, okay, like, here I am, I'm in this stage of my life that I'm supposed to find someone that I wanna spend the rest of my life with, like, I think it can be easy to feel like you have to settle.
Mhm.
And like you were saying, like really being mindful of that and trying to stay true to yourself in that. You don't have to settle. You're worth so much more than just settling for someone because you feel like you have to. So I think with that, like having really good support, if that's something that you feel a lot of pressure, like going to therapy, talking about that, because that is such a area that we do want to make sure we're staying true to ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah. And then just the knowing, I guess, that this feeling of feeling left behind or feeling behind in things, I think it shows up ongoing in different iterations over time, right? And if we're not settling back into what we want our life to look like and what we really value and what we want in relationships and what this kind of felt experience that we're desiring is, we're going to get caught up in all the bullshit and feel like we're not where we're supposed to be. You
Mhm,
know, it's so
mhm,
easy to do it on the internet, to just be
mhm.
scrolling and to see people doing really cool shit, like on vacations and traveling and whatever it is, and feeling like, whoa, 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 am I doing something wrong here? Why aren't I
Mhm.
traveling every other weekend?
Oh,
And
yeah.
so it's easy to get pulled into that, and then coming back to yourself to say, like, wait a minute, do I actually want to travel every weekend? Is that the lifestyle I really want to be living? And that's all, it's all smoke and mirrors, right? Who knows what's actually going on behind the
Yeah,
scenes, that
yeah.
reality check too. But, you know, there's there's always going to be something that can pull you away from yourself.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely. I think that brings up another area that people definitely feel behind in, and, especially the 30s, like
Mm.
finances, can you buy a home, things like that. I feel like that comes up a lot of, maybe affording a house is really hard, or maybe I can't travel. Maybe I feel like I don't have enough saved up or the amount that I should have saved up. I feel like finances are coming up a lot in sessions lately.
Mhm.
And we gotta just acknowledge, like, our especially like millennials, like this
Mhm.
this kind of is 30s age range, we are not our parents' generation.
Oh, no, no. Yeah.
And that is where that information is coming from.
Yeah.
They had many, many, many different advantages that we do not have.
That is for sure.
And life is really expensive right now. It is hard to save money. It is hard. So I've really been trying to bring that up with clients that are feeling a lot of shame about that. Like these kind of archaic messages that we've gotten about finances just cannot apply in this world that we live in today.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great point. I talking to my parents too, and they're math teachers, they're numbers people. I'm so not a numbers person,
Oh my
but
God. No.
right, like they don't know the experience of having student loan debt the way that my husband and I came out of college with, and then having a mortgage, and then having kids in daycare full time, right? Like, thank goodness one of mine is out of the daycare system now, but I mean, this shit is expensive, right?
Mhm.
And the expectation that like college savings plans should be at a certain point and loans should be completely gone and that we should be like really chipping away at this principle of the mortgage. It's like where is all the money coming from, right? Like, am I doing something wrong? Like, what else do I have to do? But also, my one of my values is like not working my life away, being
Yep.
present so that,
Yep.
I can be with my kids and hang out with my husband and my dog and, do shit that actually brings us like rest and ease, not more
Mhm.
stress.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Like there are other things that I want to be prioritizing and doing instead of just having all this stress that I have to pay all of my student loan debts and all of that off. Like I always joke, they're not going anywhere. Like they're gonna die with those loans. I think it is like coming back to like, okay, do I want to like work my ass off and like get them paid off in 10 years? Like at what cost,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And then we could talk more about like retirement and
Uh,
saving and how much we quote unquote should be putting away or capable, like it's all right. If you can look at it from a lens of, right, like the source of where it's coming from and what's realistic for you. You're allowed.
Mhm.
And like some people listening to this might be like, shit, I want my student loans gone in 10 years. Like, awesome. Good
That's
for you.
amazing.
Do
Yeah.
that. Tackle that
That's
shit. Right.
yeah.
And other people might be like, yeah, I'm going to die with this. Cool.
Yeah.
Fine. It's your life. You actually get to choose, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of autonomy in this. Like, you get to choose what your life looks like. It doesn't have to look like what your parents or your sister or your brother or your, grandfather, whoever, what
Mhm.
their life looked like, or the people on Instagram or TikTok.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that that's a really important question. Like if you don't want to get married, if you don't want to have kids, if you don't want to buy a house, like you don't have to. These are things that were kind of given to us by society. But I think recently, like people are really starting to question, like, I don't want this. Like, why do I have to buy into this? And like that's the awesome thing. Like you don't.
You don't have to.
So it's really doing the work and being like, okay, like what do I want my life to look like? What will fulfill me?
Mhm.
And there is not a rule book like
Mhm.
that is truly 100% up to me. I think that that can be a really beautiful thing when we let go of that shame and that pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then giving yourself permission to grieve maybe what you did lose that you wanted, right?
Mhm,
That wasn't what you expected, or where you are now maybe wasn't where you hoped you'd be. There's a lot of grief in that. And it's okay to
mhm,
experience grief and not
mhm.
couple it together with shame, you know?
Totally. Totally. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And your desires are going to change over your life, right?
Mhm.
So maybe in 10 years, you'll wake up and be like, shit, I want these student loans gone. I'm going to do this thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
okay too, to give yourself permission to shift and to change and to grow into the person that you want to be, or grow
Yeah.
out of the person that you don't want to be. It's all
Mhm.
this process, I think, of like just reclaiming who you are over and over
Yeah.
again throughout your life.
Yeah, I think remembering life is a flow. Life is fluid. It's not static. We don't get somewhere and just stay there
Mhm.
for the rest of our lives. Things are going to change. They're going to ebb, they're going to flow. They're going to be good, they're going to be tougher. We're going to be interested in one thing one day and, down the line we might not be interested in it anymore, and that is just being a human that is alive in my opinion. In
Mhm.
my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was looking online before we started and I found this really lovely article on Medium.
Mm.
And the guy that wrote this, what's his name? Let me scroll and see. His name is Harsh Darji. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but I'm going to read the last part that he wrote because I think it just kind of like encapsulates all that we talked about. It says, you are not falling behind in life. You're figuring out what truly matters to you. You're not falling behind in life. You're building a foundation for future success. You're not falling behind in life. You're mastering patience for greater things. You're not falling behind in life. You are running your own race at your own pace. You're not falling behind in life. You're experiencing life. You're not falling behind in life. You are falling into life.
Mm. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I love it too.
I love falling into life.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So I think that sums up pretty
I
much what we
love
just
that.
said.
Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share?
I feel like, as always, social media plays a big role in this. So, just my little plug of just stay mindful with your social media. It's not real life.
Yeah, get out there, be in real life where you're able to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm with you. Well, thank you, friend.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We will be back next week for another episode. And until then, take good care.